you wanna bet that I can get you back inside your head before the summer ends and spread a little love. Just for a little fun, I'll make you come back to me before the rise of every sun. Baby, it's meant to be, I know you got a man, but he don't understand. You're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah. There's rhythm in our love, it's impressive, excessive. You can't make this stuff up. My chest beats is restless, wakes the neighbors up above. Yeah, baby, come and show me love. Baby, come and show me love. Because you're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah. Take a one-way ride, steal us away to find a place we can hide. It wouldn't take much to disappear for a night, just to give into the need and leave it all behind. 'Cause I know that you know that I know that you want me. You told me, now show me, come blow me away. 'Cause I know that you know that I know that you want me. You told me, now show me, come blow me away. You're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah. You're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah. Suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah.
Yeah, funny behind the scenes.
Sorry.
Anyway, it's Freewheeling Friday, folks. Thanks for watching Inside the Numbers with the People's Pundit. I'm the People's Pundit, Rich Barris. You guys can follow me on Twitter at Peoples_Pundit if you don't already, right there. All right, so we're going to wrap up the DNC today, right? We'll talk about some new polling we got. Also got a little bit of an announcement. I have one. I wanted to give you a big one, but it looks like we got a bit. We do have a big announcement. It is a big one, no doubt. And then I really wanted to be able to full bore give it to them. And we'll take your questions, and we are going to go over some polling data that I have that I'm not sure. Some of it's out yet, but oh well. And we'll talk about something that I think is very, very interesting and kind of confirms a lot of what we've been talking about in the last couple of weeks. But last night, let's get to the news first, okay? Last night, Joe Biden, the DNC convention wrapped up, and you could hear a collective sigh of relief among the political class, the DC journalism, outlets, and basically that Joe Biden did not make any major flubs. Although we actually, going through his speech over Laura and I, we did find some. Actually, it's just that they weren't major gaffes in the style of Joe Biden. So he met the very low bar that he had. And, if you listen carefully, beneath the sound of hooves as the stampede of journalists ran outside to try to catch the fireworks show, instead of actually ask him questions, you could hear that sigh of relief, right? So in essence, there's a couple things. We'll go over some clips. There's a couple of things that I want to show, and it's Freewheeling Friday, so a little bit later we'll play that. But get your questions in. We'll talk about it. Overall, my impression is this, folks. It was a speech I would have expected to end this kind of convention. This was the first convention. Forget about the history of COVID and Zoom meetings and everything. This is the first convention ever where a party and their nominee did not make a rational policy argument, meaning did not tell people, did not tell voters, this is what I'm going to do to make your life better. This is why it will be better than it is under the current guy or the other guy or girl, whatever. All right. This is what I'm going to do to make your lives better and your communities better. That isn't what happened in this convention. And that isn't what happened in Joe Biden's speech, which wasn't about policy at all. The only policy in it was a national mandate, mask mandate. That's it. And one incoherent sentence about how he was going to create millions of jobs by collapsing the energy sector and using taxpayer funds that he'll get from raising taxes, which will hurt the economy, to create the boom in the economy. I mean, it was totally incoherent policy, but that's not what Democrats care about, and they won't have that scrutiny because they have the big media handicap, of course, to keep that going for them. There is one thing I'm sure if you guys follow me on Twitter, you know I'm actually really pissed off about, and we'll talk about that. But just to give you an idea about the collective sigh of relief that I'm talking about, all right? This is hat tip newsbusters. This says it all. Van, take it away. Van.
And we were prepared for it to be a terrible speech. As long as he didn't embarrass himself, we were going to come out here and praise it. You don't have to make nothing up tonight.
You don't have to make nothing up. In other words, we make stuff up all the time to you guys, and we come out and we blow smoke right up your And tonight though we don't have to do it because look, contrary to some of you trolls on my Twitter feed, Joe Biden's senile, folks. Congratulations, he got through a 20-minute, well-rehearsed speech. Not in front of a crowd. For those of you who are fortunate enough not to have to deal with a family member that is going through something like what Joe Biden is going through, the stress of crowds, the stress of questions brings on these episodes that he has, being put on the spot. Of course he could, gather himself and make the shortest speech in the history of conventions that has ever been given. Trump's speech yesterday in Pennsylvania was 3 times the length of that speech. All right. So that's what we're talking about. We're talking about very low bar here. And it was not a great speech. It wasn't even a good speech, especially for a guy who's been giving speeches and has been in politics for more than 4 decades. We are talking about meeting a very low bar. I think a lot of people are misunderstanding what I was trying to say last night, which was that he did what he had to do, which was not make a fool of himself. He didn't have to rally. Nobody was expecting him to give a Barack Obama. There's no blue America. There's no red America. There's no white America. There's no black America. There's only the United States of America. That is a great speech. That gave me goosebumps. You kidding me? That was a fantastic speech. That is a great convention speech. What Joe Biden did last night was give a mediocre speech for a career politician who is aging. And it was really, it harkened back, and a lot of the comments and feedback that we got reminded us a lot of the entire Nixon versus Kennedy kind of argument, the oldest in the book. If you watched the 1968 debate, you thought Jack Kennedy won that debate. Nixon was sweating. He looked uncomfortable and anxious. If you listened to it on radio, you thought Richard Nixon won that debate because you weren't really looking at the optics. This was similar, but in a little bit different of a way. Joe looked old and frail and weak, but he delivered it good. All right. And Joe is old and frail and weak. We're just not going to play these games over here. It is what it is. And he does have acuity issues, but he gathered it yesterday. So he met what is a very low bar. Don't take my word for it. When I tell you Democrats know this themselves, they do. And Van Jones, you were not supposed to say that on CNN out loud, buddy. You are not supposed to do that out loud and tell people the reality of what's going on. So he was ecstatic and they all were. The journalists, the Democrats, they were same damn thing. They were ecstatic over the fact that they weren't going to have to try to ignore, which is what they'll do, like they did with Joe Biden, ignore a major flaw or a major gaffe and a major catastrophe. Now, getting into the crux of this speech, like Laura said, like we've been telling you, there really is no policy in this speech. Barnes had a great tweet on Twitter as somebody like from a historical point of view, looking at convention speeches, watching every single convention, which I know can get a little boring, folks, but you really should do it first if you love politics. just for historical purposes and to really get a grasp of what other people, how they, because you got to get out of your own bubble and you got to look at what other people say and how they view the world. That's the only way to be able to accurately gauge what's going on in the country at a given time in history. It really is. Whether you like it, no matter how painful it is, I would suggest doing that. But in any event, the speech itself, like Barnes said, was really the first one, and this is what strikes me, the first one where there was no rational policy argument at all. And what we mean by that in psephology is simple. They did not lay out plans or visions for the future. This will make your life better. That will make your life better. The only thing holding together this parade of political horribles is a hatred of Donald Trump and a fear of loss of power. And they are projecting that hatred onto the electorate, or trying to, and they are projecting that fear onto the electorate. They clearly are, and by the way, that historically is a loser. I don't care what his poll numbers show right now. That is historically a loser. All right. Ask Mitt Romney. All right. I mean, you can keep, ask John Kerry. All right. Keep going. I mean, over and over. Ask Walter Mondale. All right. People weren't in love with these candidates. They hated the opponents. And in the end, they're losers because more often than not, people do make rational policy choices. And more often than not, they are more motivated to vote for someone that they love, circa Barack Obama, whether you wanted Barack Obama to be elected or not in 2012. Okay. You had to marvel at the beauty of his voters stampeding to the polls in such numbers to defend him that they were able to beat back a swing on independents against them. And then, of course, people didn't like Mitt Romney. So despite the polls showing how enthusiastic Republicans were to vote against Barack Obama because they hated Barack Obama, it wasn't that they liked Mitt Romney. Is your vote a vote for Mitt Romney or a vote against Barack Obama? Overwhelmingly, it was against Barack Obama. Well, guess what? Millions of voters were missing from his electorate. That is typically what happens. Why do you think they want the mail-in ballots? Just are you kidding me? Are you joking? By the way, people always say, this is not some fringe conspiracy. In New Jersey's third largest city, they just tossed the election in Paterson. They just tossed the election in Paterson because 20% of the ballots were invalid. How do you get invalid ballots, folks? By fraud. I mean, we're asked to pretend like this doesn't exist. The U.S. Congress is absolutely useless. We can talk about, though, in the next segment a little bit. But I do want to keep with Joe's speech, all right? Joe Biden launched his speech on a horrible, dangerous lie. Last night, he repeated that horrible, dangerous lie. I don't know where he is up here. I know for the most part, most Democrats I know, they wholeheartedly believe the crap that they read in mainstream media outlets and they hear on CNN. And they even hear on MSNBC's, what is it, LSD? They wholeheartedly believe that crap. I still, though, have a hard time believing that Joe doesn't know he's lying. Would a good guy lie about, because the major theme of this thing, right? How many times did you guys hear the word dignity? Is it dignified to lie about the sitting president saying that white supremacists are very fine people? For that matter, is it dignified to ignore your son's love child, a grandchild of yours? To ignore his very existence and not care for him and his station? He's going to care for 340 million Americans, but he doesn't acknowledge the existence of his own kin? Is it dignified? Is that a good guy? Is that a solid guy? I mean, look, there's plenty we could bash Trump about too. So I'm not, I'll save that for another time, but we're talking about Joe Biden here because I'm getting tired of like Biden supporters and Trump haters. Every time there's like some legitimate question, it's all of a sudden reversed to, well, what about Trump did this? What about Trump? Anybody ever hear the expression two wrongs don't make a right? Amen. All right. This is what Joe Biden, this is the only clip I'm going to play from his lackluster speech, and it was lackluster. And in truth, his bar was so low that they can praise it, but that had to be one of the worst convention speeches I've ever heard. Putting aside the falsehoods, which it was riddled with, putting aside that. I mean, it was just depressing as hell, right? It was very depressing. It was about shaming you. It was dark, right? And that darkness comment didn't make any sense. Black holes and darkness and shrouds. I mean, it was a shame speech, because the theme of this thing is social desirability bias. Really, it is. It's you are a bad person if you vote for Donald Trump. And they're targeting this specifically at a very specific, at a specific voter. If you are a white woman, they are talking to you. They're trying to shame you. And in fact, you were the most disappointing voting group in 2016. So the fact that white women actually did still back Donald Trump, despite what the poll showed, they were not going to, they did. All right. Despite that, you were supposed to be better than that. Right. So when you hear about the gender gap, in truth, the gender gap is driven by minority women being so lopsided in favor of Democrats. But in truth, white women are more of a swing vote, and they voted more for Donald Trump than the polls indicated, and they hated you for it. And this convention was targeted at you. You are a bad person. Your friends know it, and then you should know it too. And your friends should shame you, in fact, if you don't. I want to play this clip, but let's get Laura's take in here. I know you have something you want to say.
As a woman, though, like, they're shaming me to vote for him, but in actuality, they're making me more afraid, because I would vote for Trump all day if I was a Democratic woman, because everything is dark, everything's depressing. And then on top of it, they try to make me feel inferior to a man, saying I don't get enough money. And it's just, to me, it's a lot of like old tactics that they're trying to put into new, and it's they're regifting.
Yeah, that's a good way. That's a good way of put. But that has been Democratic politics for a long time. So regifting is the right way to put it. It's just this time, Laura, it's more overt, and the rhetoric is more dangerous, and it's it's using bigger frauds and lies to accomplish it. So, and that brings me to this. Let's play this clip, and then we're going to go over this freaking transcript again, because he's never called out on it. He wasn't called out on it the day he launched his bid. Nobody said, "Oh my God, that's a horrible lie he used to launch his campaign." He actually put the center of his presidential announcement was a horrible lie. They gushed, "Oh, finally, oh, Joe Biden, oh God." They gushed about it, and because they have completely abdicated their duty. And I will get the video during the break, and I will show them of reporters how they reacted after the speech last night. All right. This is Joe. So it made it from his announcement to his acceptance speech.
Will we be the generation that finally wipes out the stain of racism from our national character? I believe we're up to it. I believe we're ready. Just a week ago yesterday was the 3rd anniversary of the events in Charlottesville. Close your eyes. Remember what you saw on television. Remember seeing those neo-Nazis and Klansmen and white supremacists coming out of fields with lighted torches, veins bulging, spewing the same anti-Semitic bile heard across Europe in the 30s. Remember the violent clash that ensued between those spreading hate and those with the courage to stand against it. And remember what the president said when asked? He said there were, quote, very fine people on both sides. It was a wake-up call for us as a country, and for me, a call to action. At that moment, I knew I'd have to run, because my father taught us that silence was complicity.
All right, speaking of silence, shut up, Joe. I can't take anymore. I had to kill that clip. All right. He knew at that moment when he heard what? The fake news? Because this is fake news. He knew at that moment that he had to run. It wasn't, Laura, and you know this is true, it wasn't China's leveraging of Wall Street people who have backed Joe Biden his entire career, right? It wasn't the credit card companies and their leveraging of Chinese magnates. And it wasn't the Chinese calling their friends on K Street who Joe still owes favors to, right? It wasn't any of them. It wasn't the pressure that China put on Joe Biden to run, because they did. Absolutely did. The Chinese, you want to talk about election interference? The Chinese have already interfered with this election. They convinced Joe Biden to run for president.
Joe owes them millions of
At billions, he owes them a career worth of, and look, the bottom line, let's just go through the transcript. Let's just give them people the facts. All right, let's just go through the transcript. All right, here's the transcript. I will make myself actually smaller. All right, so you can see. This is the exchange between Donald Trump and the journalist that did this. That's kicked off this hoax, which Oliver Darcy from CNN has the nerve to go to Twitter afterwards. And he's got the nerve to say, you know what, we've been poisoned as a country with all of this fake news and these false, fake news. What did he call it, though? He said he gave it a specific name, not fake, because he doesn't want to use the word fake news, because Donald Trump turned it around on them. They tried to use that word, and Trump completely countered, and now fake news is directly associated with them, not the right or alternative media. All right. This is the exchange. Donald Trump goes to say, excuse me, because they're screaming at him. If you guys remember this exchange, they are screaming at him, like, interrupting. And he says, excuse me. And by the way, Joe Biden said the courage. And then there were those who had the courage to stand up to. He's praising Antifa in that. Antifa did not have a permit to assemble like the groups who were supporting the statues and monuments had. It was not only white supremacist groups that were there assembled to support the statue. And that's the point Trump is making. Excuse me, they didn't put themselves down as neo-Nazis. In other words, how'd you get the permit? And you did have some very bad people in that group, but you also had people that were very fine people on both sides. You had people in that group, excuse me, he's got to say, I saw the same pictures as you did. You had people in that group that were there to protest the taking down of, to them, a very, very important statue and the renaming of a park from Robert E. Lee to another name. And then the reporter jumps in, the hack that he is, fast forward 3 years and look at what's being torn down now. And he says, George Washington and Robert E. Lee are not the same. And he goes, and Trump responds, oh no, George Washington was a slave owner. Was George Washington a slave owner? So will George Washington now lose his statue? Are we going to take down, excuse me, he's got to say again, are we going to take down statues to George Washington? How about Thomas Jefferson? What do you think of Thomas Jefferson? You like him? Okay, good. Are we going to take down his statue? He was a major slave owner. Are we going to take down his statue? You know what? It's fine. You're changing history, you're changing culture, and you had people, and it's right here in bold. And I am not talking about the neo-Nazis and white nationalists, because they should be condemned totally. But you had many people in that group other than neo-Nazis and white nationalists, okay? And the press has treated them absolutely unfairly. Now, in the other group also, Antifa, you had some fine people, but you also had troublemakers, and you see them come with the black outfits and with the helmets and with the baseball bats, and you had a lot of bad people in the other group too. Folks, I'm going to leave it up there for a second. I'm not talking about neo-Nazis and the white nationalists, because they should be condemned totally. So Joe Biden, in his acceptance speech, repeats this lie, which he says is what the entire reason for him running. This was his entire justification. He heard a fake news lie, a hoax. And it was that moment. I had to run. I had to stand up because I was taught, my daddy taught me to stand up to bad people. Like those people he's talking, Antifa, the ones burning Minneapolis right now, the ones destroying New York City. Manhattan will never come back, as that's what we hear from our friends and family who live up there, that Manhattan is destroyed. The ones who burn Seattle, Portland, the people ripping innocent people out of their trucks and beating them near to death. Those are the courageous people who stood up. By the way, that ringleader is facing 20 years. Good. But why does Bill Barr have to be the one to do it? That was a local issue. The whole thing, either Joe Biden is a stupid idiot. Which one is it? Either he is a stupid idiot who believes everything, every lie that is spoon-fed him by his friends in the press, or he's a liar who disgustingly and disgracefully is pushing not just a lie, folks. It's not a lie. Don't care. Politicians lie. That's not why this makes me angry. This is a dangerous lie.
Yes.
Like hands up, don't shoot was a dangerous lie.
This is burning cities' lives.
This is cities burn. Cops get killed. Innocent people. Yes. And a 7-year-old, by the way, outside gets chased. Did you see that? A 7-year-old with a MAGA hat on. That's what these kind of lies do. Because when you dehumanize somebody or a group of people, you make it all right and justify gross acts of violence against them. The people, like the people in the 30s, he says. You mean like Hitler? Like Nazis? We're equating Donald Trump to Nazis, and we're equating Trump supporters to Nazis to win more votes of white women and to scare the hell out of minorities to get them to the ballot box. In the name of that, in the name of votes and an electoral victory, they're willing to sacrifice the lives of children, the lives of police officers, innocent civilians, and law-abiding citizens who are just law-abiding citizens. So a lot of people said to me, you know what? I didn't hear any mention of Antifa. Yes, you did. Rewatch the speech. He just praised them. They're heroes. He just praised them. All right. And give, when we do, it is Freewheeling Friday. Get your questions into Laura, Madam Producer, and she will shoot them over to me. All right. I can't stand, Michelle Obama. She repeated it too, by the way. Yeah. She repeated it too. We went over this earlier. But I'm talking about in the speech, in Michelle Obama's speech, she was fact-checked only on the kids in cages. But in that same sentence, she said, who praises white supremacists or whatever and puts minority children in cages. This was a disgusting convention. It was disgusting. I'll always shoot it to you straight, folks, when it comes to the political stuff and the poll stuff. But I have my own views too. And so does every other pollster and election forecaster. Psst, they're all liberal. I'm the only conservative one out there. All right.
What you're doing, honestly, is giving a view from a military background and historical background, because you know what these people are doing and what it will lead to. It's inevitable if they keep spewing this hate and division.
What you say, and that's, look, I guess that is why it makes me that angry. Balkanization like this leads to bloodshed. Always does. We're not going to be any different. America's not special in the sense that it can buck human nature. America was special because it was designed to be very realistic toward the downs and the ups of human nature. And the founders, they sought to create a society, a self-governing structure that promoted the best of human nature, incentivized that part of us while protecting us against the very real, unfortunately, negative, more darker aspects to human nature. This is the darkest convention I've ever heard. It was not, I will make your life better because policy A will help you here. Policy B will help your community here. Policy C will get you a job. And that was none of that over 4 days. None of it. It was vote because your life depends on it. If you vote for a guy who praises white supremacists while putting minority children in cages, you're just a bad person. Where's your dignity? And you can't, by the way, have it both ways. Either we're a very dark country that's systemically racist, or we're a great people ready to raise the bar and meet the moment. You just can't have it both ways. None of this made any sense. It was completely incoherent. And that's fine. And the American people will make that decision for themselves. And I will shoot it straight on how I think that decision is going. But I am an American too. And I am allowed to be concerned for our children's future. Because, I almost, Laura, the soldier in me says, let it pop now. So my son doesn't have to deal with it, So that's where we are. Let it pop now. So we have to. All right. Anyway, 1031. You're watching Inside the Numbers with the People's Pundit. Back to the smiling pundit at People's_pundit. You can follow me right there on Twitter. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube, folks. Okay. And you're doing an amazing job. We're getting, it's like I said the other day, it's like a snowball. It's becoming its own creature. And don't forget to like PPD on Facebook. Okay. Look, all this stuff this media does. And on the hour break, I will go get that clip to show all of you guys. But again, this is why we say, don't forget to tag Big Media Hate Machine. Okay. When Oliver Darcy helped CNN cover for or help Joe Biden push a lie that the president of the United States celebrated and praised white supremacists as very fine people, defended them as very fine people, or that he puts minority kids in cages that her husband built, that's hashtag Big Media Hate Machine. When they try to cover for anything, it's not just about or about party. It's not bias, folks. They are ideologically corrupt. They are no longer journalists, and they are handicappers for the Democratic Party, typically, or Republicans who are in bed, like war, all the stuff they like. That's media handicap. Don't forget to tag them both. All right. So we will be back in 30 seconds. When we come back, let's talk about some polling. Rasmus, oh my God, Kaylee is killing me. Rasmussen shocked people yesterday by coming out with that poll. All right. And in the end, overnight, I got to look at it and see what was going on there. And we were talking about whether or not it would be statistical noise. So I have the inside numbers here on what's making their numbers go. So over the weekend, Trump's basically going to be sitting in their polling. He's going to be sitting at 51% approve, 47% disapprove. So +4. That intensity index, again, has changed. We'll talk about that after the 30-second break, okay? And then we'll get into polling that I think is really important. It's polling that I think, polling data, whether Trump wins or he loses, I think is going to be the real story of the election. And they're not even talking about it. And it's amazing if you've been paying attention to politics for the last even 10 years, because this was the narrative. And here Donald Trump is doing something that was supposedly the goal of the Fox News Republican Party. He's doing it his way, and nobody's talking about it. It's just incredible. It's incredible. All right, we'll be back in 30 seconds. All right. I'm getting this Biden thing, All right, folks. We're back. Watching Inside the Numbers, Freewheeling Friday. Get your questions in, all right? Because we are definitely going to be doing questions today. Loads of them. And I'll try. Do I have to give back time? Do I owe time? Do I owe you time, Madam Producer? Do I owe you? I don't, right? We went over yesterday. We don't owe time. I don't think so. I don't know. Maybe you guys can help here. All right. But yeah, so we have the Rasmussen poll. Let me tell you what I know, guys, from it's no secret. We know Rasmussen over there, where a lot of pollsters know other pollsters. Just do. It's the way it is. All right. Which is why, except for universities, they're like their own clique. I do know a couple of them, some more, like I would say one or two, are relatively nice people. The rest of them are not, right? All right. So the strongly approve for last night, okay, is at 38%. Strongly disapprove, and this is the aggregate, guys, is 40%. So the intensity index shrunk again to 2. All right. Trump has been bad on the intensity index. He has been. All right. Whites now. This is a big deal. I told you the real reason the change in Rasmussen was 2 things: women and white women. Okay. So this entire Democratic convention is geared toward the white woman. And ultimately, it remains to be seen how they go in the election. But white women are showing, what's the word? It's not as rigid. So when you're a pollster, the first thing you'll find out in the Trump era is everyone has an opinion about Donald Trump. Almost nobody is undecided. It is during these periods of softening where a candidate like Donald Trump can actually make some gains. All right. So somebody will go from somewhat disapprove to undecided, or from undecided to somewhat approve. That is a sign that someone is becoming a little bit more persuadable. Okay. And in the last couple of weeks, there has absolutely been in the polls, I'm not talking about just media polls. There has been some softening in the sense that they were Biden voters and now they're back to undecided. So there is some movement here that if you're the Trump campaign, you would like to see that. Okay. Women now in the total aggregate, overall white women approve supposedly of Donald Trump by about 5 points. From the other day, it shot up. And we were saying yesterday, this is a statistical noise. What is this, right? Last night, it was still strongly approve about 40.5, strongly disapprove about 38 and change, almost 40. All right. But the intensity index was about 1.5. His approval was positive in last night's tracking, but it shrunk. It wasn't as like wild as it was the day before that we were saying, well, what is this? Is it possibly statistical noise? And what we're talking about right now is just 500. The sample is just the 500 that was gathered last night. Okay. It wasn't the rolling average. The rolling average is what you see published on Rasmussen's website. I'm talking about here, these numbers. Total approved was 50.75, so about 50.75. Total disapproved was 46.8. All right, so about a net approval of +4 in last night's overnight tracking. All right, which they say overnight, but it's really obviously they've been collected during operating hours, 5 to 9. All right, I think that's Rasmussen's. That's what we do. 5 o'clock to 9 o'clock. There's a reason for that. You're just during a weekday, for crying out loud. During a weekday. I know I need to do that. She's right. All right, I'm muting it. You got to wait for people to get home. Otherwise, your sample will be too liberal of people who are just home. You feel me? Or depending on where you call and how you call them, you could actually get, people who are just too conservative housewives. I muted it. All right. I got it, guys. I got it. All right. So anyway, it has to be during a time where you're likely to reach either one. And the dinner hour is always believe me, that's always fun when you catch them during dinner, because dinner hour is not a set time in America. Some people it's 5:30. Some people it's 6:30. Some people are late, eater diners, whatever you want to call them. And there's always a few. I just sat down for dinner. You're bothering me with this crap. Americans are funny, like I told you all the time. But yeah, so it does appear that there is, some returning here to a normal level, but it's still positive. So if there was a big pop and then it was statistical noise, you would expect him to go back down to like a -3 in the next day tracking or something, where he's been or had been for the prior month, over the last month. But clearly that's not the case. I think Kamala Harris's speech was a complete disaster. People who watched it clearly had a worse opinion and were more likely to say they approve of the job Donald Trump is doing. Last night was a little bit better for Joe Biden. His speech was a little bit late, however, so maybe we won't get any better numbers until a day or two. So we'll just have to see, folks. We'll just have to see. there is another poll that I want to talk about here. All right. After the 2012 election, and this is like unbelievable that this is not a story in major media. After the 2012 election, Republicans, if you remember, the RNC, their autopsy. What happened? And they concluded wrongly that they just didn't reach enough, specifically Hispanic voters. That was not the story of the 2012 election. The story of Mitt Romney could have got 70% of the Hispanic vote, and he still would have lost to Barack Obama in 2012. That number has been crunched, and we actually have shown people that 70%, folks, and he still would have lost. The real story of 2012 was the increase as a share of the electorate in black voters, specifically black female voters who stampeded out to defend Barack Obama, the first black president. Nobody should have been surprised about that. The post-election headlines and the Republican autopsy was they were wrong, and the Republican autopsy conducted by a very establishment group of losers, professional losers, was a complete waste of a lot of money. In the end, two things. The black voter share of the electorate increased, and the white working class share that even is remotely persuadable toward Republicans were missing millions of voters. If you want to see it and read all about it, by the way, in detail, you can go to PPD News and peoplespunditdaily.com. You just type in Hispanic vote myth or Hispanic myth. I showed it on what are the odds on Wednesday. Graphs and all as usual. It did not happen. So Republicans had become absolutely obsessed, wrongly, with trying to increase their share of the Hispanic vote after 2012. Donald Trump comes along and he's talking about building walls. The media lies like they did about the Very Fine People hoax. And they spread this crap. They called it goes from Donald Trump said Mexicans are rapists to all Mexicans are rapists. I mean, it's just nuts, But anyway, you get the outrage by Jeb Bush and everybody else who fought Mitt Romney, who fully believed there was no way he could increase the share for Republicans of the Hispanic vote because he's too rigid on immigration. He's too rigid on these other issues. His rhetoric, anti-immigrant rhetoric, right? It's all a load of crap. Could he be softer with his rhetoric? Sure. Would it help? Sure. Whatever. I'll concede that. But in the last election, he still beat Mitt Romney and John McCain as a share of the vote among Hispanics. And there's a reason for that. He juiced the working class vote. And this was my argument in 2012 when asked. I respectfully disagreed. And I said, you lost, folks, because you did not win enough of the working class in white states. You have ceded. You want to be the party of white people, and you have ceded white working states to the blue wall. And Donald Trump, actually, one of his geniuses is that he did realize you don't have to be restricted by the media-created electoral map. Electoral maps change. That's the only thing consistent about political coalitions is that they consistently change and evolve. And he saw, like they should have, the well-paid strategists should have saw that the map could change. There is no blue wall in the Rust Belt. It's just tradition of voting. And your platform is wrong. And when you increase and juice your share of the working vote like he did, many of whom basically gave up on the political process, there's overlap. So it's not, if you have a message of economic nationalism, populism, let's just call it populism, and it's a pro-worker message. I don't know why on earth the Republicans didn't think there are working Hispanics, like working class Hispanics and working class African Americans. There's going to be overlap. And Donald Trump's increase in his share of the electorate from Hispanic votes and even the black vote, those were workers, because his message, his pro-worker message, resonated too with Hispanic voters that voted for Barack Obama because they thought that he was better for them as well. All right? People, like I said, guys, people make rational policy choices. Don't be mad if you didn't make a good enough one. Mitt Romney didn't make a good enough one. Barack Obama did. Donald Trump made a better one than Hillary Clinton. Do demographics, of course, influence? Of course. And a lot of it's cool, but it's not unbreakable, is my point. It is not unbreakable. Anyway, that was the goal of the Republican Party for years, and they were unable to do it. Along comes Donald Trump with his anti-immigrant rhetoric, and I've been telling you guys that something is happening here. Even among Puerto Ricans, one of the more liberal voting blocks of Hispanics. We do Florida, we are very comfortable with the state of Florida. And I am telling you, his approval rating was rising among Hispanics. Puerto Ricans were a big part of it. Cuban Hispanics and now Venezuelans, but Cubans are among his strongest and most loyal voting group. And now you get this, okay, from PRRI. It should be a huge story. And it's not, Laura. It's not. In 2019, all right, all Hispanic Americans, only 28% had a favorable view of Donald Trump in the year 2019. Look, if the source is a source. I'm an apples to apples kind of guy, all right? PRRI, say what you will about him. I'm just, keep it to yourself is my point. We're going to go over it. All Hispanics in 2020. It has risen now to 36%, an 11% increase from last year. Hispanic Protestants. All right. And this is a big deal too that a lot of people are missing. Laura and I talk about this a lot. It's called political maturation. I was going to write a second book, which was going to be another theory heavy book, but political maturation of ethnic Catholics. And we look at the Irish, the Italians, Puerto Ricans, and, during the Second World War. And then, of course, now we can look at a lot more broader Hispanic groups that are ethnic Catholics. All right. There is a tendency for these ethnic Catholic groups that first immigrate, when the waves come and have over history, over time, they, what's the word, Laura? Convert. A share of them will convert to Protestantism, which, whether you like it or not, Protestant was the dominant religion in this country. I'm sorry to tell everybody. That is what most of our founders were. There was some brand of Protestantism. All right, Protestant. And that is what built this, the Protestant ethic, English common law, and natural law were the philosophies that went into the founding of this country. All right. So anyway, over time, as we're seeing with other ethnic Catholic groups, Hispanic Catholics are converting more to Protestantism. The reason why Hispanic Catholics are still the largest share is because of immigration. They come from Catholic-dominated countries where the Catholic Church is it's overwhelming. They're intertwined with the state. All right? Among Hispanic Protestants, they're driving the surge by the largest by far. More of them this year, and the percentage of Hispanic Protestants who view Donald Trump favorably has soared from 37% now to 50%. Hispanic Catholics are up a little bit. I mean, every bit counts when you're doing polls like this, 25 to 30. And unaffiliated Hispanics, which is the most liberal group. It actually was surprising to me. Hispanic Catholics were less even last year in this. Hispanic Catholics were slightly less likely, not statistically significant, but they're roughly the same as Hispanic Catholics. That's a little bit of a trend bucker because, as we know, unaffiliated Americans tend to be more liberal. Catholic Americans, if you were to take out Hispanic Catholics in 2012, Mitt Romney won the non-Hispanic Catholic vote. Trump just won the Catholic vote, all right, by a few points, but nevertheless, Italians and the Irish, since Reagan, began to split their vote among the parties, and then Republicans began to dominate that area. All right. So anyway, this is a big deal. You got more people identifying as Protestants, more Hispanics, and more Protestants saying they have a favorable view, Hispanic Protestants saying they have a favorable view of Donald Trump. There's a lot of polling data out there, folks. Trump has remained competitive in a race with Biden, who's doing better with the white vote because he is doing better with minorities. You would think that Fox News and the Republican Party would celebrate this, considering this was their goal after 2012. Mitt Romney would have killed for 36% of the Hispanic vote, right? Are you kidding me? And I know that all is not going to translate into votes, but you can see in other polling that Donald Trump, and I have told you this, it's not uncommon to see minority groups flirt with Republicans leading up to the election, only to race back to Democrats. It is not uncommon to see white voters, specifically white women, flirting with Democrats only to race back to Republicans. None of this is uncommon. But it is out of the realm of normal to see the numbers. His numbers are higher. So if they were to race back and there were to be a revert to the mean, he has a lot more padding than prior candidates, is my point. Even if he doesn't get all this, maybe he slips 2 points, 3 points, whatever. It's still going to be a historic share. I mean, you'd have to, I told you the other day, or it was like 2 weeks ago, that in some of these polls, he is getting very close to George W. Bush levels. George W. Bush did not win 44% of the Hispanic vote. That is a Fox News fabricated myth. He won more like 40% of the Hispanic vote. But this is looking very close to George W. Bush level of support. He's only 4 points away as far as his image. And as we've spoken about before, there are tons of people who don't like Donald Trump yet still vote for him anyway because they think he's the better guy for the job. They don't particularly like him, his style, his personality, his character, but they vote for him because they trust him more on the issues that matter to him, that matter to them. All right. Just to read this, according to AVA 2019 data, nearly half of Hispanic Americans identify as Catholic. That is down 49%, followed by 23% who identify as Protestants. That is up a couple of points, and 21% as unaffiliated. That is also up a little bit, which may help explain a tendency to lean more conservative and more favorable toward Trump as he widely appeals to Christian groups. Interestingly, Hispanic Protestants, 37% expressed a favorable view of him in 2019. And now this year, I'm trying to summarize what I already told you, 50% express favorable views of him now, which is a 13-point increase. Catholics, a slight surge, 5 points. Right? 5 points? Yep, 5 points. Unaffiliated Hispanics, also same amount, 5 points. All right. Here is a big kicker. All right. And we can go back to this, but the point is they are not politically monolithic or ideologically monolithic as media like to portray Hispanics as. All right. When looking at partisanship just together, when you can identify Hispanic Republicans, 59% say they are conservative, while about 4 in 10 say they identify as liberals. Independent Hispanics tend to identify more as liberals than as conservatives. I want people to really get that, all right? Because when we talk about the Hispanic vote in some of these states, which we have, Colorado, New Mexico, people say, well, that's independence, and Trump is winning independence nationwide. This is why I always told you New Mexico is a unicorn. These are younger Hispanics. They don't identify with the Democratic Party, but that is the difference between independents in Colorado, even just going back to when Cory Gardner first won in 2014. 6 years later, fast forward, and the independent group is much more Hispanic than it was 6 years ago. And although they say they are independent, the truth of the matter is they lean liberal. All right? Remember that, and please keep that in mind when you see these people on Twitter talking about how Trump could win this and win that. It would mean he would have to win over liberal independence. It's just stay in the world of realistic. And by the way, a lot of this is skewed by California because, of course, California by far has a huge Hispanic population. They are also identify a lot as independent, but they are the most liberal. All right. In other states, which we're going to talk about in a little bit, that is very different. And you can see how some of these pollsters come up with the ridiculous numbers that they get for Donald Trump in their national polls. All right. It really does matter that you got an accurate, representative, sufficient size sample from various regions to make sure that you're not just polling California and New York Hispanics, 20% of them go for Trump, and you think that that is an adequate sample. It's not. It simply is not. And we see this all the time. And we're going to highlight some stuff here.
5 minutes.
5-minute mark. Okay. Interestingly, the share of Hispanic moderate Republicans grew from 23% in 2019 to 32% in 2020. Folks, that's a big jump. That's 9 points. And if you watched the show the other day, you remember voters don't see Donald Trump as such a rigid conservative as prior Republican presidents and presidential candidates. And I told you that's a good thing for him. You cannot be seen as a rigid Republican. People don't like it. There are some people who love a Ted Cruz Republican. But you cannot win over these kinds of voters like that. Which is why I always tell people, please tell me which of the 2016 candidates would have won states that Donald Trump won to give him the victory in the Electoral College. It's because he was not seen as a rigid conservative Republican. It's because of that he was able to flip some of these states. And by the way, makes other states like Colorado closer. Even New Mexico, which I don't think he can win. Nevada. Somebody did this to me. I used to have Nevada down. All right. This is the affiliation, of course, of political affiliation and ideology of Hispanic voters. All right. In 2019, independents were 42%. That jumped 5% to 47%. You can tell Republicans have always been very small. Republicans outperform their self-described identification among Republicans. There has never been, it hasn't in many years anyway, been a large number of Hispanics who flatly identify or self-identify as Republican. They just don't. Democrats have widely held a lead, but that lead is about even from 2019 to 2020, but it's down quite a bit from 2012. Democrats used to have 40+% of the party affiliation for Hispanic Americans. Independents are up, and obviously, Republicans are doing better with those independents. And we know that from 2018. We know it. Ted Cruz's race was not as close because he got clobbered among Hispanics. It's just not, some of the stuff that we hear is just not right. It depends what state you're looking at. In Texas, which we're going to show you, Hispanics are much more conservative than they are in California. And in Florida, much more conservative. All right, which is if you see a poll where he's at like 21% of the vote among Hispanics in Florida, it's garbage. It's garbage. They're wrong. They did not get a sufficient sample size. And they damn sure did not get a sufficient Latino detail question sample size to be able to parse out who they're talking to. All right, so look, moderate independents jump from 31 to 39. You can see that the percentage who identify as liberal in independents declined, and conservative held about steady. But that moderate independent jump, they're packed with Republicans. They're just moderate Republicans. Okay. Conservative Democrats increased from 19 to 26. So they're losing ground ideologically with Hispanic voters. And by they, I mean Democrats. I have trouble with my pronouns sometimes. I hear. Right, Larry? If you're listening. Moderate Democrats also down from 2019 and liberals down. So they're more conservative this year, even though Democrat Hispanics did not increase. So self-identification held flat, but they got more conservative or more moderate. It's more accurate to say it like that, okay? Conservative independents, again, flat. Moderate independents, up. Liberal independents, down. Conservative Republicans, down 4 points. Moderates, up 9. Liberal Republicans, down 4. This tells you they have an enormous, Republicans, again with my pronouns, Republicans have an enormous opportunity here. They have an enormous opportunity. They're not very good at seeing it, but obviously you can tell from the polling, it's not just certain polling outfits. There are still some big media polls showing him doing poorly, very poorly. But the totality of the polling data shows Trump is only in this race because he's doing better with minorities. It's just true. Hispanic Americans are one of the fastest growing ethnic groups, blah, blah, blah. We know that they are 19% of the American population in 2020 and expected to increase to 28% in 2060. Political polarization in the United States rises during the pandemic, where Hispanic Americans live also helps understand why this group may have grown slightly more favorable toward Donald Trump. They're absolutely right. According to AVA 2019 data, the majority of the Hispanic population clustered in California at 21%. Texas was second with 13%, Florida third at 10%, and New York 8%. Which explains their diversity in political views. Nearly half of Republicans identify as conservatives in California, 48%, and New York, 47%. But in Florida, it's 71%, and in Texas, 58%. All right, if I read any polling data that was important this week to you guys, that was it. That was it, because this is the story of this election so far. It's a big story. It's not the story. I mean, not the entire story. But if Donald Trump, let's say Donald Trump wins in November. All right. This will be the story. That enough whites went back to him and he increased his share among minorities, particularly Hispanics and Black African American men. Working men. That will be the story. Donald Trump was reelected by a completely different coalition. Even if he loses, the evidence is getting very strong that it'll be because he didn't make enough gains with them, though he did make gains, and he just didn't woo back enough white women. But still, nevertheless, there's a shift here. There's definitely a shift because, I mean, really, Laura, you'd have to go back and check it, but that change with Black voters really started when we first geared that. It was the weekend of Mother's Day in 2018, right? That's when he started to go up. And I only remember that because it was Mother's Day. But it was small, but noticeable. And then it was before the midterm elections that he started making gains with certain Hispanics. Not all, nationwide. I just read you why. But in Florida, which is somewhere we just poll more consistently. So that's probably why we identified it there first. But you could see their support for him because we always ask the approval rating when we were polling the Senate race and the gubernatorial race. And you could see that he was doing much better among groups that you just would not have expected. Like, can you crank out more votes in southeastern Florida and Miami-Dade out of Cubans? Yeah, probably, maybe. But really what we saw was that they were holding firm. Even when some white voters started to leak to Donald Trump, from Donald Trump, those voters were holding very firm. And then something else began to happen. Independent Puerto Ricans that, weren't liberal started to, give them another look and say, you know what, I somewhat disapprove. Disapprove. And then that would shift to, I'm kind of on the side or on the fence, or somewhat approve. And then that Puerto Rican number began to get into the 40s, which is it's significant because Cubans are overwhelmingly supportive of him. All right. So let me wrap this, take a break. That was, like I said, guys, if I showed you any polling data important to this week, that was it. You know what, Juan, save Juan's question for, you see that question? That's a good question. I know you do, Laura. All right. It is 11:04, about to be 11:05 on Freewheeling Friday. Thanks for watching Inside the Numbers with the People's Pundit. I am the People's Pundit. You can follow me right here at peoples_pundit on Twitter. Follow PPD on Twitter at PPD News. And of course, the best way to support the show is to subscribe to PPD, which you can do by going to ppdnews.us/subscribe. ppdnews.us/subscribe. Or you could just go to People's Pundit Daily and, oh my God, existing home sales are huge. Oh my God. We'll talk about that too when we get back. Boom. This is a big deal. Boom. All right. No, we'll do it when we get back. Quickly. Yes, quickly. And I'll maybe even save most of it for Monday because we don't have the charts up. Oh, I just saw it. All right. So there it is, folks. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel on YouTube. And don't forget to like the page, People's Pundit Daily on Facebook. All right. We'll be back after the quick break with the Grammy-considered Bowen Band, Bad Habit. And when we do, we'll take your questions. All right, folks? Thanks for watching and send the numbers. Be back in 2 minutes and 15 seconds.
How much you wanna bet that I can get you back inside your head before the summer ends and spread a little love. Just for a little fun, I'll make you come back to me before the rise of every sun. Baby, it's meant to be. I know you got a man, but he don't understand. You're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah. There's rhythm in our love, it's impressive, excessive. You can't make this stuff up. My chest beats, it's restless, wakes the neighbors up above. Yeah, baby, come and show me love. Baby, come and show me love. Because you're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah. Get on a plane and take a one-way ride. Steal us away to find a place we can hide. It wouldn't take much to spear for a night, just to give in to the need and leave it all behind. 'Cause I know that you know that I know that you want me. You told me, now show me, come blow me away. 'Cause I know that you know that I know that you want me. You told me, now show me, come blow me away. You're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah. You're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah. Suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah.
Lordy. Twitter just auto-populated inside the numbers for us, folks. So that means big media hate machine. We did get a media handicap, but tag it inside the numbers when you share it. And we see all you guys sharing out there. You know, we really do appreciate it. We love you guys. You know, we always talk about milestones on YouTube, you know, subscribers and stuff. We hit milestones on paid subscribers this month, you know, at we didn't expect to hit this month. So you guys are all awesome, and we love you for it. We really do. I really can't tell you. It's not enough appreciation in the English language for your trust, and yeah, we our adoration for you is it's up there. All right. So here we go. 11:09. Let me just blast through like Madam Laura said. This will be on PPD right after the show. We'll get it up. You know how I am. I absolutely have to approve everything that goes on PPD. There's some great people who help and write, but ultimately I got to look at everything. We have never been fact checked before. and I never intend to get fact checked. Okay. So the only way I know how to do that is to look at everything by going out, right? Thoroughly, even though I'll be taking a new role soon, which I will tell you later. And I'm going to have to figure out how to juggle this puppy because I'm not giving up. I'm just not. All right. Existing home sales continue record pace. Soar 24.7% in July. Folks, why am I so happy about that? Again, the housing sector under the Trump boom was the one sector of the economy, 4 cylinders, right? That was the one cylinder not firing. So the Trump economy was strong, the strongest in years, but it wasn't firing on all 4 cylinders. Now, the housing sector right before the pandemic was about to explode. And we were very, very unhappy with the decision to close down the economy right before all 4 cylinders were about to start firing. Excuse me. The economy was not going to slow down in the first quarter. It was not going to slow down. Read it in the Bureau of Economic Analysis press release. First quarters can be slower. They were negative under Obama Biden quite a few times, and they were throwaway quarters. Under Trump, we had 2 years of not a single negative first quarter, and rather strong actually in the second year. This 24.7% gain comes after a 20.7% gain. National Association of Realtors have been looking at the data that we show you every day on the show from the housing sector. Well, whenever it comes out, but every day, it does. We go over it. And they raise their forecast because it's so strong. We're up to now 5.86 million units. That's above the consensus forecast, above the high end of the forecast range, which the highest forecast that we aggregated this month for this was 5,750,000. All right. The prior was revised down actually to 20.2, but I mean, it's still a huge, huge gain. Last month, we were still down 11.7% year over year. Because of this surge, we're now up 8.7%. Why does this matter to me? Because people wouldn't be buying homes. They wouldn't be building homes like you see in the new residential construction report if they still didn't feel at their core that they were okay. The labor market sucks and the data is better, but it's, insured employment claims keep popping up like they did last week. The trend is still down, but it's not as steep as I would like it. Obviously, folks, people are making the decision to buy a home and live the American dream. That American dream, get their own little castle, right? Every man knows what I'm talking about. That is your castle. All right. Obviously, they're doing that because they still feel strong. And housing can drag us back. It can do it. And in fact, everyone we speak to in the housing market sees it as the sector that will lead this recovery back. So with that, and this nagging little fly in my ear.
13 minutes
All right.
of my time.
All right. With that, we will go to the questions. Hit me.
All right. So actually, I know this question was asked later, but I thought it was a really great question. It's about polling. Lemon Minty from Periscope wants to know, don't pollers have to identify where they are from, what company or organization they represent? Because in 2016, she was polled by the DNC and they asked if she had firearms in her household.
Oof. Yeah. So I don't know who, maybe it was the DNC. I don't know who conducted that poll. You absolutely should identify yourself when you call somebody. Okay. So for instance, all right, when we call, and I won't do it, Laura, so chill out. All right. She hates when I give up specific wording sometimes, but the introduction is very important. So you would say, if you got a call from us, you would either hear, whether it's a live call or an automated interactive voice response, you would hear, hello, this is Big Data Poll. All right. We are conducting a brief political survey whatever in your congressional district, whatever it means. You are called randomly chosen to participate in the survey. Your participation is voluntary, but it's vital and it's appreciated. And then we go in to nudge them to let them know that this will be, you can tell us the truth. We're not going to go blow up and tell your employee. I mean, I'm not going to give the specific wording to that.
Your information.
Right. But absolutely, whether it's a live caller or it's a interactive voice response, or even, by the way, when we do some texting to the cell phone message you will get will identify who we are. Hello, this is Big Data Poll. You have been chosen at random to participate in a survey. Please click on the link or press 1, and we can do the survey right through, because we do it both ways. On the cell phone, you could get it, and you can actually take the survey by simply responding, but or you can click on a link and it will redirect you to the online version of the questionnaire. But we identify who we are all the time and what we're doing. So it'll be like, we're conducting a national political survey we're conducting a political survey for a national media outlet or something, or whatever it may be. You should absolutely do that. It's clear, right? In APOR's standards, you should absolutely declare who you are. I mean, hiding who you are, which, by the way, Hart Research tried to do with Laura when they polled us in Florida. It was a live interviewer call, and she actually had to ask who it was because I picked up the phone. I picked it up. It was our landline, and it was a live interview. A live interviewer clearly was Hispanic. You could tell from her voice. And she said she was calling with a political survey and asked to speak to Laura, right? Last name. Specifically. And I'm like, all right, you conducting a poll or something? And she's like, yeah, we're conducting a survey. I hand it to Laura, and she, of course, puts it on speaker so I can hear it. All right. And they go on. And look, I am a white man in my 30s still, and a white man in my 30s, and was back then. And, I'm statistically more likely in the state of Florida to be a Republican. And, and by the way, they should be able to check on a voter file, right? Anyway, they asked to speak to Laura, who is a Hispanic woman in her 30s, and obviously more statistically likely to be a Democrat. Asking for her was a big no-no. And they didn't identify themselves. Only when she started making comments. You remember that? So Laura did it. She did it. We wanted to see how she was going to respond. And she's like, thinking about November. Are you going to? And she goes through the list of candidates, because we did have third party and more candidates on the ballot in Florida. And she goes, Donald Trump, right? I'm voting for Donald Trump. And she's like, I'm sorry, did you say you were voting for Donald Trump? And she's like, yes, I said I'm voting for Donald Trump. Oh,
like Donald Trump.
Oh, interesting. Oh, the hell are you talking about? Shut up and give the interview. But we wanted to see their reaction. So finally, she's like, who are you calling from? And she said, well, I'm a call center working for a polling company. I can't divulge the name of the calling center. So she said, fine, can you tell me the polling firm you have been contracted with to call? And it was Hart Research, and for NBC News, right? So, it was like major no-nos, folks. I mean, these interviewers, we use Caddy teams. They are, or KD teams. It's CATI, but we use KD. These people are supposed to be trained. Like, they are not supposed to make noises and have reactions. But Laura knew it was coming, because you could tell she was talking before. So she did it just to see if she would get and absolutely she got a very unfavorable, very social desirability bias, folks, right there. And
she tried to make me
hold on. Let me get her in there.
Well, what she actually did is she tried to make me feel bad that I actually liked Donald Trump as a Hispanic, which made me really laugh. And then
with her being Hispanic, which is a big deal.
So she was like, how could you, in essence? And then she also tried to insinuate, because obviously they have my information and they knew my husband wasn't Hispanic. So it was like almost as if she was trying to say I was brainwashed by you sort, because you were a white male, and me as a Hispanic woman can't fight off your oppression, apparently. but that was bad.
It was funny. It was fun. And also, too, if you remember, there was that Senate race. There was no reaction to Rubio. So it was clear. The message was clear. It really was. And it was funny. At first, I thought they said ORC, and I couldn't hear so well, but that would have been CNN, but it wasn't. It was Hart Research. And it was their ballot, their questionnaire, because we heard all the questionnaires, the order in which they were asked. It was absolutely their poll. All right. But anyway, yeah, you are not supposed to do that. You must identify yourself, and theoretically, and what's also the word, ideally, everyone should get roughly the same interview. Okay. Which is why in some modes, I do tend to favor interactive voice response. Even if a member of the Katie team calls, give them the option to take the interview using interactive voice response, because then they will get, whether in English or Spanish, they will get the survey read to them. It sounds great. I mean, the technology is incredible. We use Amazon Poly, just to say, and they are amazing. By the way, we've never had a problem with Amazon. They've always been great with us and worked with us. They know what we do. They know who we are. No huffing, no puffing. They just try to get us the greatest possible product, and their speeches are amazing. I mean, tones, inflections, and the voice, they're incredible. I think they're the best. But anyway, everyone should get the same interview to avoid any kind of tainting of the survey, like Laura's kind of interview. And then also too, they have anonymity, right? So they're not talking to somebody who's going to judge them or go say to the person in the cubicle next to them, this woman, she's Hispanic and she's going for Trump. You believe this idiot? There's none of that going on. So, we tend to favor that, but very important. You have to identify yourself. Hi, this is Big Data Poll. We are calling blah, 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 or how the question is. There's plenty of ways to word it, but you should absolutely identify who you are. And campaigns, they typically won't. If you've ever been polled by a campaign before, especially if it's interactive voice response, they just roll right through it, right? They just steamroll you. Press 1, who you voting for? Press 2. Press 1. It's garbage. It's garbage. I mean, it's total garbage. All right, let's go to the next question.
Next question. All right, let's see. Luis Rivera. If Biden, okay, I'll kind of reword this one. If Biden dies in a month, do ballots get reprinted, or do they run with Biden on paper, but votes go to Kamala and the new VP pick?
Come on, people. Oh, my God. Oh,
they're curious. How does it go?
Okay. So there has been instances of that's why we had the faithless elector issues. If you guys remember, in 2016, it was a lot of talk about faithless electors. In the end, Hillary Clinton set the 104-year record for the most faithless electors. And even that, if you go back to that, it was because the nominee died on the ballot and went with the vice presidential nominee. So that would be essentially what happens. Now, ballots that are already printed and have gone out, that's a practical, of course, it wouldn't be likely, but it is a practical potential outcome for any candidate, by the way. Especially in a pandemic, and these guys are all old and at risk. I mean, it is at least a practical argument that don't you think we should wait until election day, kind of thing. But and it always was intended to be like that. But because we've already been through the convention, and states would have to reprint ballots, I imagine. I'm not too sure, but if they already did print them, then that would just be for Harris. That would be a vote for Harris, I assume. The only time that we've had this historically, there was elections weren't held the way they are today, so we didn't have some of these issues. We just didn't. An electoral college had the fight they had, and that's how. And ironically, there still were less faithless electors than Hillary Clinton, so it's crazy. It's an extraordinary historical moment. I guess it depends. Does she mean before or after the ballots are already printed?
Once they're printed, saying
once they're printed?
Yeah.
He's on the ballot then. I look, I'm not a lawyer. I'm not an election lawyer. And I'm not sure even some of them would know the answer to that. But I am going to say, because I'm just thinking about prior instances of things happening, the ballot deadline is the ballot deadline. And that would be a vote for Harris. And I'm pretty sure that's how that would roll out. But you know what? I'm going to check on that. I know the perfect election political law guy. I'm going to ask him, and I'll get a better, more informed answer. Because I mean, it's not a likely scenario, but it could happen. And I would like to know that myself in full. Probably some little, what's the word I'm looking for? There's probably some things that can change the outcome. Yeah.
Evan Bliss wants to know, in your polling, are more people switching from Trump 2016 to Biden 2020 than there are switching from Clinton 2016 to Trump 2020, as most public polling shows?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would like more of my own before I fully answer. In Pennsylvania, it was remarkable how similar it was. Not much of a difference. But I would say this, if you factor in the slide that Democrats have had there statewide, you have to come to the conclusion that at least in the state of Pennsylvania, more switched from Democrat to Republican. All right. Because, I mean, it's just a matter of it's practicality, right? In the end, it was still roughly the same, where Trump was taking like 12% of the Democratic vote and Biden was only taking, I think it was 6 or 7, was it 7% of the Republican vote, which, considering how many votes went to Bill Weld, that was a little bit surprising to me. And then he was carrying independents by 5, which was 1 point more than he was carrying them in 2016. And that's why I was a little bit shocked by his strength in Pennsylvania. I will say this, that we'll be swimming in data soon. So I'll be able to give you much, much better, not just a state, but a region and also nationally. All right. And I'll tell you about that if you guys stick around toward the end. Let me just say it. It looks like we will, or Big Data Poll will be polling for an outlet. So and it will be looking like 2 polls a month or so. So we'll be able to answer that a lot better.
Just FYI, our Periscopers are telling me that they're not allowed to share it for some reason. But anywho, besides the point, Sir J. Pat has 2 questions. Barnes thinks voters decide a year in advance. Do you agree? And do you think, especially considering Trump is being blamed for COVID, that this explains why he's having a good rebound? And are you worried about Gen Z, Generation Z, considering the so terrible conservative boomers are the same people the same people who were hippies in the 60s and 70s? Sorry, I kind of edited that question.
Yeah, it's interesting. The people who were, hold on. All right, it's interesting. The most liberal people of the 60s, the young people, the McGovern people, they are now heavily Republican. So that is one of the more interesting aspects to 20th century politics, right? So you never really count out the millennials and Generation Zs, and I don't do that automatically. Churchill was right. You're heartless if you're not a liberal when you're young. You're stupid if you're not a conservative when you're older, basically, or you're brainless, right? To summarize what he said. That tends to hold fairly true in 20th century American politics. And we're now just, a fifth into the 21st. And that also tends to hold true, right? Or at least the second half of the 20th century. All right. So you never count out people like that. However, there wasn't the indoctrination and culture wars that we have now. So nothing lasts forever. But as far as whether people decide early, I do think that there's credibility to what Barnes is saying there, because in my effort to try to prove that these wild gyrations in public polls are not real swings, there is a already predetermined, truly persuadable small sector of the electorate in least now. And that they're not persuadable the way they were as a whole many years ago. All right. Even going back to the 90s, for instance, a lot of Republicans would vote for Bill Clinton. You know, a lot of Democrats would vote for Republican congressmen and women. There were ballot splitting, ticket splitting going on. You know, that nowadays, when I try to prove that these were artifacts of the polls themselves, the vast majority of people who chose the candidate they chose first did not really shift. Were there mind changers? Yes, but they were small, a small amount. And in the end, when we polled the people who were undecided and we would ask them about their moods, their positions on the issues, who they agreed with more, when they finally decided and chose, it was not overall. Of course, there are some exceptions, always are in statistics, but overall, it was not shocking how they ended up deciding. And that's why I have said, in case you guys have heard me say this before or tweeted before, where in truth, there is value to early polling. It's just that media doesn't ask the questions that provide real value. So early election polling throughout the summer and even of course before is garbage, and it's meaningless and has little predictive value. It just doesn't. We've gone over 100 years now, almost, of public polling to show you this. It has little predictive value, and there are questions that gauge that mood and where those people, where their home is. Okay, if I can make that an analogy, that doesn't come across in media polling, but we have done that before, and that is not. It's not a shock where those people end up. So I do think there's some validity to it, but I also think that the size of truly persuadable voters does change from election to election. It's just that it never really gets above 9%, you know, like roughly 10%. People say, and they round up, roughly 10%, but in truth, it's been as low as about 6 or 7 and as high as 9. And then from there, it's a matter of who are you going to get out. So, you know, those are the two equations that really go into who wins an election. You know, who's going to get out, and then who's going to take that little slice, and how big is that little slice really? You know, so maybe 3 parts, but 2 variables, 3 steps to find the answer to that.
All right. MVLACH77 wants to know, how do you think Biden's speech will play in the Rust Belt states and Minnesota?
So this is the problem with Biden's speech. And I think he did have almost like a built-in advantage in some of these Rust Belt states. They just have a history of voting Democrat. He's that kind of Democrat, but it's on paper. And in the past, it hasn't really come out that well. I think if Biden loses, and he loses 1 or 2 Rust Belt states, he will have made the mistake of not addressing specifically their problems. Successful presidents win because they convince voters their policies the direction they're going to take the country will make their lives better. The Rust Belt is uniquely sensitive to this because they were the ones who were hurt by Joe Biden's policies. Look, Connor Lamb, I went to get that clip. He just told CNN or MSNBC straight up how it was. And Connor Lamb is like an Ed Rendell. They'll say some things publicly, but in the end, they don't think Donald Trump's going to take Pennsylvania. They don't think Joe Biden is going to take Pennsylvania back from Donald Trump. And Connor Lamb flatly told them the other night, what is the hard truth? They still remember that their experience. They know Joe Biden was that politician who was around. He presided. It was his policies. It was his order, his government that presided over the hollowing out and the destruction of their communities. They're doing better under Donald Trump. Even with this pandemic, they're still doing better. That's how bad it was out there. All right. Donald Trump created more manufacturing jobs in his first years that is related to the auto community than the entire auto bailout program was able to claim they saved and created. All right. And he did it without spending any money, bailing out anybody during a crisis. It's just economics and growth. Connor Lamb's right. In the end, you have to talk to these people and tell them, okay, you got a little bit of what you lost back. This is what I'm going to do to not only keep it and preserve it, but I'm going to expand on it. What did Joe Biden say he was going to do last night? He was going to destroy fossil fuels take all of the tax cuts that the American people got and put it into green energy. In Western Pennsylvania, that don't fly. It just don't fly. And I don't see, maybe he'll still have some love out there on the auto industry, but they're uniquely sensitive, where some voters you can get away with that. That's why they tuned out everything they heard in 2016 and they voted for Trump anyway, because they know it, they live it. You have to address it. You have got to address. And then as far as Minnesota goes, if you think those people aren't aware, keenly aware, they didn't take notice to the fact that Joe Biden ignored the burning of their city, I got to tell you, I just don't believe it. I don't believe it. And I think that's why you see Trafalgar go from plus 5 Biden to tied up at 47. Meanwhile, Biden's ignoring it and Trump is going to Minneapolis and meeting with minority business owners who had their communities and their homes crushed and burned to the ground. You got to tell voters why you're going to make their lives better. That's how and why they were able to block out all that noise.
All right. Lamb Crow has a question or two. Did the biography video and then the segments with Biden's kids and granddaughters have any different impact than the speech itself? And the second question is, are people like Brett Baier and Dana Perino willfully ignorant when they spout conventional wisdom, or do they just not know any better?
They're shilling. That's it. Look, Dana Perino is a Bush Republican, just like 3 months ago. And not even. I mean, we're square in the middle of the pandemic. Donald Trump was doing horrible with polling. And she was flatly saying that Donald Trump was going to win because this is a forward versus backward election. And she changed her tune. She changed her tune, not because she's getting scared and the polls are bad or worse. They're not. There's clearly a tightening. She got the marching orders. Folks, Brett Baier is not a Republican like you are a Republican. These people are actors, all right? They are essentially actors. I'm sorry. It's true. Their job, Allison Camerata was not a conservative all those years she sat on the couch on Fox and Friends. Megyn Kelly, she wasn't a conservative all those years on the Kelly File. They're full of crap. And Fox News's upper echelon, they rely on the Trump base and the Trump personalities. Or not even Trump personality, because Tucker is not a Trump personality, despite the criticisms leveled at him. But he is a populist voice and a populist conservative voice. Sean Hannity, he's a little bit too much of a cheerleader for me. I can't take that. But he is a conservative. They rely on that primetime lineup, Laura Ingraham. But for the rest of the day, and the hard news, what they put forward as their hard objective news, they are taking the marching orders from the new leadership. They want Trump gone. Fox is not pro-Trump. They are not the Hallmark Channel version of cable news like they pretend to be. They're liars. They're professional liars. I mean, look, I'm not trying to malign Brett Baier, but he called Iowa a red state. Iowa went for Barack Obama twice. The last time before that a Republican carried it was George W. Bush. He carried it once in 2004, and he barely edged it out. I mean, he carried, but he barely edged it out. Barely. It went for Bill Clinton. It hadn't voted red like this until Donald Trump. And he was making a serious argument that it's a red state and Donald Trump is slipping in a deeply red state. That's BS. So the answer is yes, he knows it's BS. He is not. They also are the very same people who Fox put at the helm to run interference for Jeb and then later everybody else other than Donald Trump at Fox News. When Fox wanted to do that, they went to Brett Baier, Megyn Kelly, and Chris Wallace. And they said, you are the hard news people. We need you to do this. And they said, yes, sir. And they did it. They're full of it. They're just full of it. I'm sorry. Sure, I hear Brett Baier is a very nice guy. I'm sure he is. Everybody tells me, you know what? I like Brett. He's a good guy. But he's full of it. He's totally full of it. I guess that's really the end of that question.
Oh, what about the speech part, Richard?
Oh, yeah. In the end, that does go to defining your candidate, and you use a convention to introduce your candidate to America. However, it's very hard to reintroduce someone who's been in politics for 47 years. And convention speeches don't erase records. Hillary Clinton's convention was a much better convention, complete with the Bernie supporters flipping out outside and everything. It was still a more effective convention. It had more rational policy choices, although it did have the hate Trump, element. Love Trump's hate, right? Which they were right about. Love does Trump hate. Love for a candidate trumps hate for one another. All right. But they still at least put forward a rational policy choice. She gave and delivered a great speech that was optically way better than what we saw last night. All white suit. She looked great, whether you thought, whatever. I mean, look, I shoot it straight. That was a bad speech for policy, but a great speech for what a convention is made to do. Except for that stupid face, she memed herself into the grave with that what? That's stupid. And when she did, you remember when she did, I was like, no, Hillary, stop. When she was doing, I'm like, no, stop. Because it was just it was so her. And they were going to, like the Cernoviches were going to meme her to death with it. And they did. But it was still a better speech than what Biden delivered last time. In the end, what happened to Hillary Clinton is she had a record. She supported TPP. Her husband is responsible for the post-Herbert Walker Bush WTO NAFTA trade order. In the end, records can't be erased. So that's up to Donald Trump to make that case. But I think Joe Biden opened himself up, even with all the criticisms. I mean, look, we had Hunter Biden come out and try to say, vote for my daddy. He's an honest guy. I mean, Hunter. I mean, a little bit of a joke. You're insulting Americans' intelligence a little bit. But in the end, he opened himself up to criticisms because he was there for all of that. And then also, too, with the pandemic stuff during his speech. I mean, the record is the record, but he's got a long record that can't be undone because of a simple convention speech.
All right. Jack M has a question. He said, did not 2016 have more persuadable voters because of high negative disapproval for both candidates?
That's a great question, but I don't think it had anything to do really with the favorability. That only determined who was going to show up. So if you can drive up your opponent's negative ratings, all you'll do is keep their voters and their leaning independent voters from going to the polls. That is all that we really have ever seen in the past. Not that it expands the persuadable number of voters. I think that there was a larger number of persuadable voters because Donald Trump brought back into the electorate millions, 6-7 million voters that had been persuadable swing voters in the past. And many of them stopped voting because they didn't think the process was good for them. They didn't like a candidate, not because of their personality, but because of their policy. It was just like lesser of two evils thing. Strangely, as disliked as he was, Donald Trump was still never really seen as a lesser of a two evil because he had such a radical different agenda and approach, and he wanted to stop that, at least not in the states where it mattered. All right. So I think that he expanded the electorate, and that those were more persuadable people in the future. In the past, they just ultimately went with Trump because they only voted for him, really. They only voted to vote for him, is what I mean. Typically, you would think that would be the case, but it wasn't with Hillary and Trump. And I'm thinking that's probably because it was a presidential level race, and party is more the partisan voting index is really a giant score attached to a voter. How likely is a voter to do, to vote for their party, their self-identified party? At the presidential level, it's very strict. It is the ability to cross over. It's not the same as even for a senatorial candidate, which is still strict, but definitely like a gubernatorial election or something. It just isn't. Like North Carolina, perfect example.
MKR, do you think Republicans need to have a better rebuttal when the Charlottesville lies keep getting regurgitated? I wish Republicans could be on message like the Dems are.
Yeah, so it was a bad message, but it was on message. All right. So it was a negative message. It was a message of fear and a message of hate. It didn't really, like we've said now a million times, didn't have any rational policy choices or positive tones to it, but it was still on message. Republicans are cowards. This is a great example of where their cowardice really kills them. Because instead of cowering like Mitt Romney did and trying to kowtow, oh, you can't, it's a false moral equivalency to draw between Antifa and white supremacists. No, it's not. I mean, in the 20th century, communists easily committed far more democide, killed far more people than Nazis ever did. I mean, but they're just a racial component which uniquely offends us collectively, but it's not a false moral equivalency. And then you have your very typical people like Lindsey Graham and others that would do that and then like kind of equivocate. Obviously, if they would have taken a damn second to look at the transcript, they would have known that was fake news. And then because they don't stay on message, it takes time to try to chip away at that hoax. And obviously, look, they feel so emboldened that honest media has not yet chipped away at that hoax, that their nominee actually used it in his acceptance speech. In the end, next week, Trump is, as usual, they have to rely on Donald Trump to do everything. They're like little children. They're babies. I don't know about the future of the Republican Party after Donald Trump. And that's true of whether he wins or loses. Like, they are stupid. They are not smart. They are not strong. They are weak. And that's just it. I mean, really, all of the antonyms of what I just said, right? So the antithesis of, the words I just used. They do have to be on message. And that message has got to be very simple. We did it before. Don't go back. Move forward. They're liars. They're hoaxers. And that's it. And I really do. I got to tell you, I don't want to hype expectations, but I really do think Donald Trump, he's an entertainer and he's a brander. And he's not going to let his brand, not just about what it means for his election chances, but I don't see Donald Trump allowing himself to be put into a Zoom box like they put Joe Biden and everyone who spoke for him into. There will be, I already know this for a fact, there will be taped speeches during the day in the convention and non-prime time, but during prime time, there will be live, all the primetime speeches will be live. And there will be what they say, a safe, socially distanced audience, or I forgot, a responsible crowd. So it will have more of a convention feel next week. And then I don't know what Trump's going to do, but I whether it's visually or some kind of surprise or something, I do think it will be a more entertaining convention. But yeah, they got to stay on message. And Barack Obama, he really encompassed everything an incumbent needs to do to stay on message in one word: forward. Mm-hmm. An incumbent needs to tell the country, move forward with me. Do not look back to this 47-year career politician who failed you for half a century. Move forward. Don't let them dupe you like with hoaxes and Russia collusion lies. And he should, by the way, make a pretty big deal over how Joe Biden and Barack Obama, I mean, that shouldn't be the main message, but it should be there, lingering, like they're going to lie to you again. If they'll lie to you about something as serious as this, believe me, they're lying to you about making your life better. All right? It's been a rough ride, but stick with us. And that's it. That's what he's got to do. Not even a rough ride, but, the change, real change, doesn't happen without resistance, kind of thing. Not scary, rough,
Jack Lawton, Rich, I know we've talked about how the polls in Florida have been way off the last few cycles, but I'm just wondering, what is Trump's true status in Florida?
I would give Donald Trump Florida by a point, or like a point right now. But it's going to be very difficult to beat Donald Trump in Florida. And if Pinellas swings back from where it went with DeSantis and Rick Scott, it'll be even harder. And it looks like it's going to, because there was a vote there. and, Greg from election night, who we may have for election night again this year, we've been talking about a team we're going to put together. I have to do the math and stuff. And I've been saying, maybe we'll have Larry and Greg and Laura will do producing. And so we'll have some kind of a team here, and let me do my work so I don't have to host all the time, and I'll just pop in and make calls. But if I'm hearkening back to 2016 here, because Greg and I identified this vote in Pinellas that really wasn't a Republican vote, and it was a Trump vote. And it wasn't shocking to me to see them not show up in 2018. Where we did see them show up was like more partisan Trump votes in Collier, which was huge, and Lee, of course. But I just don't see. I mean, I know where every vote comes from in Florida. The Amendment 4 registrations, a bunch got thrown out, but even when they were getting those numbers were not what people thought they were going to be. White ex-felons were registering majority Republican, and they were more of them. And then black registrations were in the low 80s for Democrats. It was not the overwhelming one. It just wasn't. And now they don't even have that to rely on. So the numbers are the numbers. They have the lowest partisan advantage since 1972. And independents appear to be with Trump by a low single digit. And Republicans are going to vote. They are going to vote. I think they showed everybody that in 2018, talking about a 10-point national mood, and Republicans still beat back that swing. And not only that, they toppled an incumbent senator. I don't think people realize how important that is. They kept the governor's mansion, and they toppled a 3-term popular incumbent, right, Laura? I mean, when we were polling that, Rick Scott was 1-6, which we thought was inflated, but we know why it was. I admitted it. I'm like, look, he's not ahead by 6 points. And that was simply because of undecideds that we knew we were really going to go with Bill Nelson anyway. But yeah, that was inflated, but he always had the lead, even though Floridians said they liked Bill Nelson a lot. It was like mid 50s. They liked him, 57 even at one point. They just thought he was there too long. They wanted to defend Trump, and they gave it to Scott, who they saw as a better leader too. That was a huge thing. Rick Scott turned his whole thing around, his whole image around after Irma. Florida will be incredibly difficult to beat Donald Trump in the state of Florida, and they're going to get a shock because Nate Cohen's over there like, how could he be so strong in Southeast Florida? How could he be so strong? If you were a pollster, maybe you'd know. Open up your voter file, take a look. There are voters there that are going to buffer some and of the loss. And it is possible. Barnes thinks that the Cuban vote could actually go a little stronger. I wouldn't be shocked, but it's not going to be any weaker. That's for damn sure. They love him. They love him, guys. I'm telling you. And there's a new voter base there that can help him from falling. Republicans just don't want to fall into like the 30s over there. Otherwise they got in some trouble. Trump was in the 40s. I wouldn't be shocked at all if he comes in like 46% over there.
All right. Juan Felipe wants to know, what share of the Hispanic vote will Trump get this time around? And will big media hate machine suppress good polls during RNC and post-convention to make it look like Trump got no bump?
Yeah, so I actually was listening on the Getting Coffee, Getting Ready for the show today. I was actually listening to Geraldo on Fox and Friends. He was absolutely right. They will play games, Juan. It's not just how they'll play the games with the polls, what they did in 2016, the way they timed them. All right. And then everybody got mad at ORC for conducting that poll, which showed Trump up by 1 point after the RNC nationally. And they got fired for it, by the way. That poll got them fired. That poll got them fired from CNN, being, actually doing the ethical thing. Really, ideally, people should not poll. They're going to poll like hell this weekend. And in the middle of the RNC, mark my words, Juan, this is what they will do. They will poll through the weekend and into Monday. And in the middle of the RNC, before Trump's speech, they will drop the Biden plus 15s. Okay? Mark my words. And then they will wait until the Trump bump softens before they release or even get into the field to conduct the field work. This is what they did to him in 2016. The lone exception being ORC, who timed it ethically, I think. And what happened? It was Trump +1. They lost their job. Mark my words. Timing is a lot. Oh, and on the first part of your question, I mean, right now, if you would ask me, can he get to 31? I would have been skeptical at one point. At this point, he really is. I am not kidding, guys. He is nationally in the range of mid to high 30s, starting to approach George W. Bush's Hispanic vote share. That's the answer to that question. I don't know where it's going to end up, but that's where he is now.
Right. You're having a lot of questions about the effect of vote by mail in swing states. And Richard Warder also wants to know, with the mail-in voting the left is pushing so hard to have, do you see this being long-term for the left, lasting past this election? And if so, are Republicans messing up, not truly stopping it?
Yes and yes. That is the answer to that question. Yes, yes, and yes. All right. I really do worry about this because I absolutely, after getting into Pennsylvania, which hopefully you guys will, I'm hoping we get started today. We're at 2:30. We're going to do some survey designs, and then looks like we're going to be cranking. All right. Barring any huge hiccups. And I will show you more. Oh, can I answer the first question? And I'll show you more in depth. But when I was this is why I'm very concerned. I was really kind of shocked about his strength in Pennsylvania. And I absolutely, talking to some people in Pennsylvania, absolutely can see Donald Trump leading in the state of Pennsylvania on election night by like 50, 70,000 votes. And over the course of 3 days, they chip away, and that costs them the Electoral College. I do. And then all hell breaks loose. This is what I'm worried about. It's not really for me. Look, like everybody else, of course, I have a preference, but that's not my top concern with this. It's going to be up there for everyone to see. And then depending on how this does shake out, if they feel like they can get away with it, like they did in California in 2018, they will make it permanent. We have never in the history of our elections, folks, seen that many congressional elections be overturned after the fact. And they feel like they got away with it, so they continued and continued. Mm-hmm. Florida, we really fought back. And we kind of stopped, But Republicans are not, boosting the budget to $20 million is not how you do it. Now, Trump today, he's getting beat up from the media because last night he said, I'm going to have federal law enforcement watching elections. That is what really, we've had the Postal Service, we have had carriers from the Postal Service get arrested and charged with election fraud before for throwing out Republican ballots. It's not even one case, two cases. This stuff happens. The media tells you it doesn't. It does. And it was a huge thing in Broward County in 2016. What they did with Republican ballots when they came in, if they get away with changing the nature of elections the way they're doing right now, they absolutely will do it again. That's the nature of progressivism. And actually, that's one of the only aspects of that word that makes sense with how they really do view the world and how they operate. They will continue to progress and chip and chip and chip and chip and chip until it is a norm for all of the United States to conduct elections like the state of California does.
All right. And D311 has a lot of questions. Does Rich think that the daily press conferences are helping Trump now? He has changed the way he does them, and it seems to be working.
Yes.
Awesome. Does Rich think that Trump campaign will win its lawsuit against Murphy in New Jersey? And what do you think about Trump's real approval number as of today? What does his approval number have to be in order to win on election day?
So I think he's running out of time with Murphy, and he's in a very liberal area. If it goes to like a federal court, it'll be drawn. Trump did flip that district. It's one majority Republican appointed now, but it doesn't matter. It'll be drawn randomly. Judges don't like to interfere. I mean, the state court really is the one who has to do something about it because they have to decide whether or not, which he does not. I mean, it's pretty simple. Governor Murphy did not have the authority, and we've seen this in Wisconsin. By the way, these other unilateral actions to change and reform election, how they're conducted in election laws, with the stroke of a pen from a governor, have been rebuked. But it's not uniform precedent yet. So unfortunately, this is a problem because the federal courts never like to step in and deal with this stuff. They just don't. It's pretty clear over the course of the last 8 years, they don't like to do it. But he really should. I mean, if it's the letter of the law, he should. Governor Murphy does not have the authority to do that. And look at what just happened in Patterson. Third biggest county in the country. I mean, third biggest county in the state of New Jersey. 20% of the vote was deemed invalid. 20%. A judge ordered a new election. That's how bad it was there. 2 Democrats have been brought up on charges of voter fraud. I mean, the media wants to pretend like this stuff doesn't happen. We have cases at like the daily coming out here. All right. And then I do think he's doing better for himself with those daily press briefings, because in the end, people like, especially those persuadables, they like a presidential president. All right. And they like to see him doing his thing. Sandy Hook, or not Sandy Hook, Superstorm Sandy really helped Barack Obama in 2012. I'm not sure Mitt Romney was ever going to really win, but it definitely widened out his lead. Maybe Obama would have lost Florida, because they deal with hurricanes. So maybe it would have lost Florida. Maybe it would have lost Ohio, but it was still going to be Obama's election. But people like presidential candidates. Presidential leaders. They do. I mean, it's just a reality. Yeah.
All right.
Did I miss one element to that question?
I don't know. I deleted it. All right. Michael Myers has a question. Can nothing be done about China influencing the election? Biden's special prosecutor. And is there someone in the Trump campaign who prevents the hiring of a real populist?
Jared Kushner has many faces and many roles. He thinks his son-in-law is a genius. He is a liberal. He doesn't know what it means to have a connection with the voters that elected Donald Trump. And he doesn't, he needs another. The only pushback he's getting right now, the only populist voice he's getting right now, he's getting from like Twitter, and his instincts are still the best instincts. But when you're surrounded, the president's a mind, a head spinning job, and you've got to have different people around you. He still has Stephen Miller, but he doesn't have, this big, huge role. The idea that Jared Kushner would know how to connect with voters who elected Donald Trump is just crazy to me. It's crazy. I would honestly, Don Jr. has it a lot better than most. He really does. And I know that I actually think Don Jr. one day under the right, would make a great candidate. I know that it's going to drive liberals nuts because they hate him, but then there's nothing that can be done really about China's interference. But there is something that's supposed to be done by our own public corruption units in the Federal Bureau of Investigation about this stuff with Biden. Look, now Biden he walks on water, but even the Washington Post, when he was the vice president, when he went to China, and then Hunter got that deal, that $1.5 billion deal with, by the way, there were military applications in that money management. All right. When even the Washington Post said Joe Biden was inexplicably soft on China, and shocker, it must be unrelated. Like, they railed against him. But we only have one-way public corruption charges. Look, Steve Bannon, we spoke about him a little bit yesterday. Maybe this is, legit. Maybe it's not. But nobody, one thing I learned between yesterday and today, nobody actually complained for being defrauded. So what the hell was the predicate of that investigation? What was the pretext? And that it gets prosecuted, but one side doesn't. I mean, unfortunately, there's not. We need to deal with the problem of rent-seeking behavior, which is really a whole other show. But in Washington, D.C., we need to deal with the problem of rent-seeking behavior from special interests on K Street, which will ultimately deal with people like China interfering with our elections, because they're doing it through their voices that are using the process to legitimately influence lawmakers and political players, policymakers. So when we deal with the issue of rent seeking, it will limit the appeal. Someone like a Joe Biden to get in bed with these people. Joe Biden's been enriching his family for decades using his public office, and that used to be called public corruption. All right.
Hey, you know my opinion. I think they should all get their salaries taken away and just get paid for travel.
I just read Glenn's comment. It's hilarious.
I can't see it.
I'll share it with you. Okay. All right.
So, Mr. Chris Fitz, is Texas swinging at the state and local level to the Democrats? His Democratic activist friends believe it is.
Let them believe it and let them waste money. Joe Biden's own polling has him down in Texas by 7. He keeps up some of this stuff, it'll get worse. I don't think Texas is going to be as red as it's used to be. It is getting more purple. There's no doubt about it. And in a really good election, I could see Democrats swinging it. It's just not there yet. All right. Beto was as good as it was going to get for them. If Beto ran against Ted Cruz again, a rematch, Ted Cruz would thump him by like 9 points probably. They lied about who Beto was. Beto lied about who Beto was. They never were told Beto's going to take your guns. He wasn't the gun grabbing guy. Beto's been through a real transformation since that election. That's why that race was that close. And still, even on a great year, with them picking up the districts like Pete Sessions' old district that you could foresee them picking up, they still didn't do it. And if you think back to the polling we just went over earlier in the show, I try to explain to people that's why. So a lot of the people moving out are actually hurting Texas. So the liberals that are abandoning the mess that they've created are fleeing to red states. And one of them has been for a while, Texas. And they are voting still for the people who destroyed their state that they left. All right. What has saved Republicans and kept it still a Republican-leaning state, and I can show you the voter files, and we've been through Texas. Never mind. You can rewind and see that one from months ago. I did Texas voter analysis, right? What's saving them is that there actually are more conservative and Republican voting minority groups in the state than people give them credit for. And Ted Cruz did pretty darn well against them. Who killed him was the white woman who moved there from California. That's who killed him and hurt him. But it still wasn't enough, is my point. And they had a great turnout, and it still was not enough. And it's not going to be enough this time because he's not there. Biden, in his own polling, folks, I will tell you right now, he is down in North Carolina by about 4 or 5 points, but they think they have a shot. He's down in Georgia by 3 points, but they think they do have a shot, even though they know it's ultimately that 3 points is really hard to get to. All right. And then in Texas, I think he's down by 7 or 9 in his own polling. All right. And Nevada is closer than people think. I just don't think Trump should be baited into it. It's a waste. It's going to be a free for all with mail-in votes. If he has a superb, crazy landslide and he takes Nevada, great. But it's economically depressed, and Clark County will print as many votes as they need to print. All right. So that's that. Yeah. I don't see it yet. And I've been through Texas quite a bit. Take a second, go back and look in the YouTube thing when you get a chance. I went over Texas, opened the voter files. You'll see what I mean. Even though they're making great gains, or in Austin, outside in the suburbs of Austin, and really the census is going to show this, that I'm right about this. They have the 2 largest metro growing areas in the country, and it's because of 2 things. Again, fleeing blue states that are collapsing, and new immigrants. The minorities that have been born there are actually keeping the state Republican.
All right. Jim wants to know why are all these Catholic blue states? Is there a historic metro component to this ethnic bloc? Are there different? Are there? Okay, sorry. Let me reword that for him. Is there a difference between rural and urban Catholics? Have Catholics ever been majority Republican?
That is a great question. So there was a brief moment where all Catholics together did go majority Republican, and then that quickly faded away because Hispanic Catholics started to grow as a share of the overall Catholic vote. And then just in the last presidential election, did they tilt slightly Republican again overall? But Mitt Romney lost the overall Catholic vote. John McCain lost it. And that is the way that has been the political atmosphere for a while now. There are a lot of blue Catholic states that have a long root. They have roots in the Democratic Party. They are working Catholics. There's tons of these districts in the Northeast, in Connecticut, even there are outside of areas where I don't think they have a great chance, but Maine, that I do. They're more French Catholic, though, by the way. That's their history. And then Republicans just haven't really made that effort to go after these people, even though they had some success in local legislature elections in Connecticut. They had strong success. They took the one that hadn't been held by a Republican in 40 years or something. I mean, it was a real sea change. But again, there is that history there of the Irish Tammany Catholic, right? And what happened, the reason why there's such a strong divide between the urban and working class and suburban Catholic is because over time, it goes to political maturation that I was talking about. They don't stay there when they politically mature. They leave those areas. So the Irish, they clung to it. Think about when the Irish used to get jobs in the police force and the fire departments. That was the old Tammany order in New York City. Think of it like that because it happened everywhere, Chicago, everywhere. And then you had your Italian communities as well. There's no real sensitive way to say this. When urban areas became more ghettofied, all right, Italians just jumped ship and they went to the suburbs. We were both part of the exodus out of New York into the suburbs of New Jersey. And then that's my own experience into working suburbs, middle, suburbs, but still working. And they felt bad for their old communities, but they've essentially abandoned them, right? For a while, the Irish hung around and they thought they saw themselves as like defenders of that community. This used to be kind of, our beat, because if you used to be a cop, right? It's my beat kind of thing. Over time, though, once they abandon that and become more conservative and less Democrat, and they start to break those roots with the Democratic Party, they leave. So that's what you leave behind is a more urban vote, a more urban and liberal vote. And then what goes to more rural areas or suburban areas is the Republican vote. And that has greatly contributed to this big and growing divide between metro urban America and the rest of America. Because it's not, this idea of suburbs is bull. If I could curse, I would without getting YouTube. It's bull. It's not a suburb. My suburb is R31. They are not poor. All right. The one next to me is even ritzier. They're R plus 32. It's not the same as just, where are you in a suburb? It's a culture and an attitude. It's a class divide. All right. 12:15. Last question, folks.
Yay, I get 2 questions. That means
last question. It's 12:15.
Well, do you have any opinions on Lauren Bobbert's chances in Western Colorado? And Ashwin wants to know if when will the first Rust Belt poll come out and how to contribute?
So that is you're gonna hear about that within a day or so. Okay, so and maybe a little bit of a change. We may do something a little bit different. The Rust Belt poll looks like it's got a sponsor. So if I can do that and save you the dough, we'll do that. And we'll maybe do something else, Florida, something like that. But you will hear about something, which is why I have to go in about maybe later tonight, even earlier tomorrow, right? So it will be soon. So once they pull the trigger, I'm going to design a questionnaire tonight and have been already for quite a while. I just have to actually put it physically together. So the team's been like kicking around questions. How about if we ask this way? How about if we prod it this way? What if we come at it from this direction? We're trying to do something different. We don't want to do the lame old stuff that other media outlets are doing. So we've been at this for a while, and Barnes and I with the one have been kicking it around. So you will hear about this very soon. And then I'm going to be putting together, as soon as I look at the existing home sales thing, I'm going to sign off on that. And then I'm going to get into my Gizmo, and tailor the actual physical questionnaire. And then it's just a pain in the butt building phone application surveys, right, Laura? They are very time consuming and look like they need to come into the 21st century. It's like old, only operates on Windows. They suck. The person or company or persons who develop polling software for the phone, even better, phone and online. So you don't have to go to different sources and you can collect all the data in the same area. All right. That is my dream. All right. If you could do that on a Mac, for the love of God, you will be rich. I'm telling you, there's people who are dying for it. Absolutely dying for it. And it would be quicker. You would increase productivity, reduce workflow. I'm telling you what, I think I should freaking develop this, Laura. Or at least get some team who should develop this. $1 million. Otherwise, all we got to do is we have to do like clouds. I like Mac. We have to do cloud systems to run or at least review results through the programs. It's ridiculous. But the actual IVR applications take a very long time. On the question in Western Colorado, I don't know about that. So let's see. I mean, if Trump was to have a really good election, then states like that may swing, back, or districts really. Same thing with a couple out in Arizona. Not sure they're going to get some of them back unless they have a really strong election. So yes, redistricting in 2022 is going, Jack, I saw in the corner of my eye, is going to wreck the GOP. So they would need and that's going to happen even if they have a good election and win a lot this time. It's just in the works. That is why all of this is so important. Doesn't matter whether you vote locally of course it matters. But I'm saying so many people ignore those down ballot races and they have enormous implications on your life. Enormous implications. All right.
I just want to say something. FYI, Evan, I have your question about Alec. Cheryl, I have your question about the RNC. And Michael, I have your question. Dean and Sir and Dirt Doll, they will all, and Jeff Plummer's question will be answered tomorrow. Just Monday. Letting you know. Monday, yes, not tomorrow. He'll kill me if I make him work on Saturday.
I do work on Saturday. I just don't do it like this. But Evan, I did see your question actually, and I will expand on it on Monday. But in the end, a lot of it has to do with fundraising leads, help fundraising. They know Biden needs money to catch up with Trump's cash on hand while he's been out raising him. He still needs to catch up to that cash on hand because their burn rate is very high. Yes, Biden's had 2 good months. The burn rate, has been ridiculous. In Trump's campaign, their burn rate is great. So they need to play catch up and spend. So fundraising helps. And then also too, it can create, and there is a risk of creating complacency. However, it can also demotivate the other side. And they feel like they are demotivating some of Trump's base. They do. All right. So I'll expand on that more though on Monday. Okay. All right, folks, listen, before we kick rocks out of here, for those of you who are on the Gulf, look, TD13 has strengthened to Tropical Storm Laura. Like, I live with a tropical storm Laura, a hurricane Laura.
Better
all right.
it.
And it may start to threaten the Gulf Coast early next week, Florida next week sometime. Could be 2 hurricanes in the Gulf at once. just prepare for that, because these puppies could be like bouncing off each other and just bing across the state. Just, do what you got to do. We're all hurricane preppers. We know the role by now. I just wanted to give you an early heads up. All right. And yeah, that's why, they interactions between two storms like that can be crazy. All right. All right. And then also, like I said, you will go, you'll get more information about what we're going to do here really, really soon. Okay. So just stay tuned. And as usual, thanks for watching Inside the Numbers. Follow me on Twitter if you haven't already, at @peoples_pundit. Follow PPD at PPD News. After Twitter ripped us of all of our followers on Twitter after the 2016 election, we have now clawed our way back to 10,000. It's a modest victory. I have more followers on mine because they didn't personally attack me like they attacked PPD. We had, I don't even want to say it. I don't even want to say the numbers. I don't even want to say it because it pisses me off. But they massacred us after 2016 and attempted to just come to destroy us. So we're clawing our way back up. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel on YouTube, and don't forget to like the page on Facebook. I will give you those links, of course, in the outro, as we always do. But best way to support the show is to subscribe to PPD, which you can do by going to ppdnews.us/subscribe. ppdnews.us/subscribe. And because you guys we love you for it. I mean, there's a lot going on over here between polling that's going to be going, and we've outgrown this platform, and that's got to be implemented. What's the point? What am I trying to say here? The appreciation is through the roof, and the English language is not sufficient. All right, for me to to explain it to you. We just love you for it. That's all we're overwhelmed. All right, not like the reaction to Biden's speech at the DNC. I forgot to show you guys this. Remember they were replaying crap? Remember they were replaying Zooms? They just threw in 6 blank Zooms there because they couldn't find enough people to Zoom on, to clap on Zoom. I mean, it was really, really bad. All right. So bad. All right, folks. Listen, we'll be back 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Keep an eye on my Twitter feed, but I may just pop on. If I got something I want to tell you, I may just pop on over the weekend and just say, hey, listen, there's some news. Check this out. All right. But keep an eye on the Twitter feeds. We love you. Be safe. See you back on Monday, 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. All the best, folks.
How much you wanna bet that I can get you back inside your head before the summer ends, and spread a little love? Just for a little fun, I'll make you come back to me before the rise of every sun. Baby, it's meant to be. I know you got a man, but he don't understand. You're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah. Rhythm in our love, it's impressive, excessive. You can't make this stuff up. My chest beats, it's restless, wakes the neighbors up above. Yeah, baby, come and show me love. Baby, come and show me love. Because you're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah. Take a one-way ride, steal us away to find a place we can hide. It wouldn't take much to spear for a knife, just to give in to the need and leave it all behind. 'Cause I know that you know that I know that you want me. You told me, now show me, come blow me away. 'Cause I know that you know that I know that you want me. You told me, now show me, come blow